Yeah, well, you try doing this. Welcome once again to another episode of this version of reality. Liamo All-Star here, and like most of you, and like the title of this very episode, if you are listening to this, you are bored. Yes, well, I'm going on a tangent here. Why? Because I'm bored, you're bored. You know what? Being bored sucks. You know why? Because you can't do anything about it. It's really annoying, isn't it? I mean, once you're bored, that's it. Everything becomes boring. Turn the TV on, there's nothing to watch. Go on the internet, just end up mindlessly scrolling through Wikipedia, pointlessly scrolling through YouTube, and for a select few, resorting to porn. Call your friends, those that answer, remind you just why you don't call them that often, and those that, the ones that don't answer at all, figure what's the point? They suck anyway. They're already out. Why didn't they invite me out? Screw them. Maybe I'll send another message to see if they got my last message. And maybe I'll call them to see if they got the message, and message them to see if they got my call about the message. And then I'll leave them a voice message to say, hey, I sent you a message and I called you. Did you get the message? Oh, yes. Even right now, half the people listening to this are thinking, really? What the hell? He's talking about boredom? Real original. This guy better have something better than this, or I'm out of here. But then I gotta find something else to do. So of course you're bound to wait this one out, like a bad movie. I guess it helps when you're spontaneous and in the moment. But I tend to think that, and rationalize things. Yeah, don't get me wrong. It saves time and money. The problem is you become a cynical, maniacal prick who doesn't go out. One time my friend suggested we go to Infinity. Now, for those who don't know what Infinity is, apparently it's a place with interactive light shows and effects and mirrors. They make you wear mitten-like gloves, I guess, so you don't get any of your greasy hands and, fingerprints all over their mirrors, or resorting to punching yourself in the face, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, so my response to this suggestion was simply, if I want to see a bunch of pretty lights and weird sights, I'd just smoke some pot. Probably be cheaper too, and a lot more fun. And, well, I guess, depending where you do it, it's legal. But I don't think it really is here in Australia at the moment. But then what do I know? I mean, I'm too bored to go and look that one up. So, Another suggestion was an art gallery, to which I uttered the same response. If I wanted to see a bunch of weird pattern, weird pictures, I'd just take some drugs, Probably get a bit better appreciation of it. The only time looking at paintings is, the only time looking at paintings is fun is if you're under 10 and you drew it, But as an adult, you just think, yes, so what is it? Am I supposed to stare at it like a kaleidoscope? I guess you know that you've ultimately given up when you decide throwing a heavy object, throwing a heavy object to knock inanimate objects over is a good way to kill the time. Otherwise known as the art of bowling. Yes. It's really pointless when you consider the fact that no matter how many times you hit those pins, they just keep putting them back up again. And no matter how many damn times you chuck that son bitch in the straightest, most accurate, mathematically, scientifically proven method to a 99.99% probability of knocking down all 10 pins, there's always one prick of a pin that never goes down. I get excited when it starts looking like I'm about to break 100. And then I look over and either see a bunch of 8-year-olds at some little bastard's birthday party matching my score with no damn bumpers to assist. And all they do is drop the ball and it just rolls all the way to the end and they get about 10 flukes in a row. I'm putting in effort, they're putting in none. We're getting the same scores here. It's like, what the hell? My whole life to this point is just, I'm struggling to get over 100 and they're just dropping the ball and, yeah. Oh, day. That's good old bowling for you. The next lane over, there's some middle-aged league bowler with a bold, shiny head, almost like a bowling ball mascot, who is excellent in knocking down all the pins, but can never seem to strike with the ladies. Haha, see what I did there? Yeah. Does anyone notice after bowling that their strong arm gets tired and sore after tossing it? Remember, people, we're talking about bowling balls here. Although it is all relative at the end of the day. So, that's something to think about. Then there's always the fail-safe option. The movies. But the problem here is that for guys, if there's no violence, no explosions, and no plot, well, then there's no point. But I guess you get settled for no plot, at the very least. But violence, explosions, you need at least one of the two, or one of the three options, at least one of them. But for girls, if there's no hot-bodied guy with abs or some intricate plot about someone overcoming the odds, whether it be about war, oppression, or vampires, then let's just rent a movie with abs, some intricate plot about war, oppression, and vampires. Uh-oh. Me bitching about boredom. The wambulance is coming. Ha 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 ha. Good old sounds and cars driving past. That's so inconsiderate. Don't they know I'm recording a podcast here? Keep your emergency to yourself. But anyway, I digress. It's obvious here why it never ends well when a man and a woman go to the movies together. Each gender is so passionate about the opposing genres that heated debates and domestic disputes will flame a conversation between the two genders. Guys don't want a movie with abs. Not everyone has abs. It's really, really hard to get abs. I'm a fitness specialist. It takes a lot of dedication, a lot of hard work, and you don't get to eat everything that you want to eat. You've got to be on a plan. You've got to be strict with your regime. There's probably about negative 10% of people that are actually, if that's even possible, that actually stick to the regime and, have abs. But then how many abs? I think the most abs I've ever had in my life, and, trying to a point, I think 2 abs, maybe 4. Never had a 6-pack. Definitely not an 8-pack, but you know what? Everyone with their 8-packs, you can take your 8-pack. Whatever. Nevertheless, I mean, to say the least, why would we want a reminder of something we don't have? A movie with abs? That's just not fair. Why does he have abs and you're showing us what we don't have? And girls, well, they don't want a movie with random pointless action. Girls don't believe that would ever happen in real life. Therefore, the whole thing is just stupid and unbelievable. Why couldn't we see that movie with the vampire and the werewolf? It's a Twilight reference right there. Yeah, now that's more realistic. Oh, dear. Well, the cure to boredom could be at home. Having a pool table and an air hockey table. That's right. A real pool table and real electronic scoring air hockey table. Although I actually sold the air hockey table. Needed a bit more space, but I did for a while. And I tend to forget, especially when I'm bored. And there's something about both tables that seems to incite anger and violence. With air hockey, you try and keep it cool, when you have a small... Yeah, try and keep your cool when you have a small plastic puck fly into your knuckles at about 100 kilometers an hour. Play hurts like hell. I've literally been cut open by those pucks. You know, the little thing that you use to score in the goal. You know, that little thing that slides across. You know, if you don't know what it is, you've got internet access. Go look it up on the Wikipedia. And pool, need I say any more? Go to hit the red ball into the corner pocket, somehow sink the white and give your opponent 2 turns, and then proceed to watch as they sink every single ball and end the game like a professional pool hall hustler. Meanwhile, you're getting a good feel of the weight of the pool cue, looking at it thinking, you know, if I hit him hard enough in the back of the head, you know, if I hit him hard enough, just hard enough in the back of the head. Or maybe in the back of the forehead. Maybe he'll miss the next shot. I tend to think of myself as considerate, though. I mean, it is my pool cue, and I'd have to replace the damn thing if I were to crack it across the back of someone's head. And that would just be mean, and it wouldn't cure my boredom. Or maybe it would, you know. You know, a bunch of cops coming around now. Have to go for a midnight jog, you know, kind of escape. Have to, you know, do some research here before a judge, and just going deep down the dark path there, aren't I? Well, enough of those silly little hypotheticals, but, you know. Pinball machines are damn expensive to buy. I mean, you see the price of them. They're like $10,000. You could buy a car for that. Seriously, you could buy a half-decent car or even put a down deposit on a house for the same price that you could buy some of those damn pinball machines. I did happen to know a guy who had a pinball machine, but apparently, and this is no joke by the way, the guy charges people to play his pinball machine in his own home. His little coin of phrase is that there are no free games at my house. I mean, factor in the fact that middle-aged man, several investments, frequent freeloader, has dinner Kramer style over his friend's house and still living with his parents. Well, I guess in that situation, you can say whoever said money can't buy me love obviously never heard of a prostitute. And in the same sense, you say, I gotta love the people that say you only live once, but then say no to doing anything. Yep. My little rant, my little discussion on boredom. Is that doing anything for you? Is that making you less bored? Are you still listening? Well, if you are, then my speech on boredom has just ended. But I guess talking about things that cure the boredom has just begun. I mean, what can you do to cure boredom? You've obviously always got fun old YouTube, like my YouTube channel for instance. I mean, a little discussion about curing that boredom. I have been doing it for some time now, and I've been providing a little bit of updates here and there with regards to the channel, what's been happening, what's going on, you know, and I guess a little updates right now. I would have to say things are going alright. You know, I'm not focusing too much on the subscribers at this point, because if I did, I'd be abysmally depressed and saying, well, you know, I have very little to no subscribers in comparison to some of the heavyweights on YouTube. Some videos have been going through, and there have been people in America and France and Indonesia and some other countries that have been watching the videos and considering that I produced them in Australia. I mean, that's a pretty good sign that it's reaching out there. And from the analytical point of view, there are definitely some views coming along. And a lot of the things that I've got going on there at the moment, I mean, I believe I've updated before, update now. I just finished recording the series that is coming up after the America tour, several series in fact, a couple of Tekken challenges, a couple other challenges for gaming between myself and Saver, just fun little competition between the two of us, and posting it. And you know, then we well, because he's got the VR, and we've been testing that out, doing some recordings and some gameplay with it. It's a rather interesting concept. I mean, you know, the whole virtual reality, just how far it's come and how far gaming is yet to go with that technology. I believe that, you know, that may be the next step in gaming, but it's still quite a way off, and only because of the limitations of virtual reality gaming, because it requires sensors, it requires a large enough room in which you can move around, and, you know, there are hazards. Think of it like, you know, when the Wii first came out, and it had the sensor controls, where, you know, the motion sensor controls, where you could use them to do just about anything that the game required you to do. Use it as a wand, use it as a bowling ball, use it, you know, because the Wii Sports especially, which we recorded some videos of that as well. We're just randomly playing Wii Sports just for the fun of it. Not too many of those, because there's only so much you could do with it, you know. And, you know, if you look online, hey, here's back to the boredom bit. If you want to kill your boredom for maybe 5 minutes, type into YouTube and type in Wii remote fails, or anything like Wii, you know, breaking the TV, you know, flying off and breaking lights, and just amazing. And that's why they had to create that little disclaimer to apparently cover their own ass. Nintendo had to cover themselves by saying, you know, that you must, you know, secure the harness around your wrist so that it doesn't go flinging off and destroying your property, essentially. But yeah, it is going well, I believe. The development of technology is advancing forward, but with regards to modern day gaming, I can't say that I'm a great fan of it at the moment. And the reason for that is because, especially the trend since PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 consoles, a lot of the games, and even to a degree some of the other consoles, like, you know, Nintendo is, you know, as well to a degree, since that time, in particular PS4, Xbox One now especially, a lot of their games, they're only multiplayer for online, and that's if they even have that option. Like, for example, old game known, and a lot of people would know this one, racing game known as Need for Speed. This is a great party game, a great racing game, and a lot of the new games have been restricted now to, it's either multiplayer online only, or it's just single player gameplay, and you gotta wonder, what the hell are you doing? You're killing your market. It's like, you know, you don't want to keep the longevity of these games going for long enough, and it's just, they're losing the market completely on that threshold, because once you finish playing the game, that's it. But, you know, if you've got a get together, you're having friends over, you're having a party, you're having, you know, maybe even doing, you know, what I used to do, and, you know, just have a bunch of games out when I had a couple of get-togethers, and from there I would have a 3 TV setup with 3 different consoles, and, you know, 3 different genres of games, so that there was a variety. And I made the mistake of renting one of the new Need for Speed games. Now, don't get me wrong, the gameplay is awesome, and, you know, the graphics are great, but the multiplayer aspect is being removed, so it was like, there was just no point in, you know, the point was lost. You know, couldn't play the game, and I effectively wasted time, you know. But a lot of the games now as well, they're trying almost to force people into seclusion, where their only friend is perhaps some 40-year-old overweight balding individual whose purpose in life is to occupy the lounge he's sitting in. Of course, the problem there is that you wouldn't know this, because you'd be playing with them online, or in any other, you know, in some alternate circumstance. you'd be playing with a bunch of 10-year-old kids who know more vocabulary than you did at that age, have no respect, and a bunch of young adults and teenagers who will rant and rave and insult and use vulgar language and everything online, and insult you and berate you and call you a noob, or if you beat them in a game, then they'll just effectively try and bully you. And it's like, sit down. You're arguing with a computer, because very casual gamer here, if even that, because a lot of the time I've been just doing other things, and probably the most that I've played games recently is only because I've been recording it for the purpose of gameplay, and I will admit that it is, to a degree, content filler. I will say that, and I will readily admit that. There are there are gamers online, on YouTube especially, who their specific purpose is to play through games and people watch their reactions. That, on my channel, to a degree, is basically, it's part of content filler. It's creating different variety of content that some people may be attracted to, some people may be drawn to, but it also creates that variety to keep things fresh. But most of the games that I play are only the ones that I've chosen to play, whereas a lot of these other channels will play a different variety of games, just to test them out and to play through them. One of my favorites is Tekken, that I like to play through. And, if you've seen a lot of the videos, a lot of the challenges, this will be a constant recurring game, because, the gameplay, it is one of my favorites, and, well, a lot of my friends' favorites. I used to have, like, a little made-up league back in the time. Back in 2000 it started, and it ran for, like, must have been, like, 9 years. Like, just a small group of friends and friends of friends and their friends and their friends, and it almost, this was all before online gaming as well, and it was all very random, sporadic. What's interesting about it is it just started with me and Saver, also known as Alan, and we just basically were just like the title said, we were bored and playing through games and had to give some sort of purpose. And I think one of the games that we're playing through might have been WuTang, their knockoff game, the game that they bought. That's an interesting one right there, to say the least. It was a game for PlayStation 1, and it was known as WuTang Shaolin Style, or also known as WuTang Taste the Pain. It was basically a game that they had not created, but sort of bought the rights to. And I guess if you want the backstory of it, then, once again, go look at it on Wikipedia. But it was originally it was, a game that was developed by someone else, and it was supposed to be some other game. They went, I think they didn't finish it, or they, like a lot of development studios, they went under before they could. And WuTang, who is, the WuTang Clan, who is an American hip-hop group, specifically from Staten Island, in good old New York City. Yeah, so they bought the rights to the game, or they basically, got it developed for the purpose of having their music as, the backing soundtrack to a lot of the gameplay, and just used the rest as, I don't know, it was more or less just an advertising ploy, because the gameplay was interesting, and, it's a very old game now, because we're talking about PlayStation 1, the original PlayStation, which was back in 1999, so we're talking 18 years ago now, just about, as of this podcast at least. So they made this game, and one of the characters had a sledgehammer, and it was one of the best characters in the game, and we're playing through it, and we're both using the sledgehammer guy and came up with, just off the spur of the moment, it's like, yeah, I'm the Hammer Champion, because of continually winning with that character, and then made up this imaginary title, the Hammer Championship. And then shortly after, then just out of boredom, it's like, oh yeah, well, then started playing Tekken, and playing through Tekken. Well, I'm the Tekken Champion. And then after that, playing through, because it was Tekken 3, it had Tekken Ball modes, if anyone remembers that, or if anyone has Tekken Tag 2, that's where it originally came from. And then it was like Tekken Ball Champion, and then just champion of everything, handball champion of this, champion of that. But the one that actually really took off was the Tekken Championships that we created, and it's actually got a long storied history with a lot of people along the way. And I guess, well, it just really spawned from there, and that's where this whole gameplay for Tekken especially came from, because we created titles, Saber was the inaugural Tekken champion, and then Saber, inaugural champion, and then lost it to his sister. And then we ended up deciding to have a tournament, who, basically one of my old friends, Chris Pollard, ended up winning that one. And then eventually I ended up winning the title. He ended up having the title vacated, because then he won it and he held it, and then he stopped defending it. And he agreed to it. It's like, yep, he basically forfeited the title because he didn't defend it. I won the title, and then I lost the title to one of my other friends, went by the name Margus, and then he lost it to Akuma, and then he lost it back to Saber, and then Saber lost to me, I lost to Saber, Saber lost to me, I lost to Saber, Saber lost to me, I lost to Saber. And then the second ever female to win that title, so there were actually 2 females that ever won the championship. Mel won the title, and then lost it back to Saber. And then a guy named Jack won the title, and then I won it. And then a guy named by the alias Master James won it. Then a guy using his full name, Alan Chung. Then a guy Unmerciful. Alan Chung won it back. Then I won it back. Then Saber won it in another tournament, and then I won it. And well, I guess that was probably the last. That was back in 2009. I think there was someone else who did win that title off me. And hey, I'm looking through this little history right here, which goes back to 2009, 2010. Yeah, that's how bored I am right now. I'm going right back into the history of nothing, and I probably lost a lot of people right now. But yeah, basically came up with a lot of different titles for no reason. A Tekken Ball Championship, which was won by several different people, playing ball modes. I exchanged it a few times between myself and Saber. Saber, then myself, then Saber, then sister, then Chris, then Saber again, then myself, then Saber, and then a guy named Jade won it, and then a guy named Bonnet won it, and then a guy named Maverick won it, then Jade won it back, then I won it, then Master James won it, then I won it, and then I think the last known champion was good old Josh. I think he knows who he is, and he's, that was back in 2009 once again. And what are the other main titles? The Tekken Tag Championship, which, so it spanned quite a few titles, but this was an interesting title as well, because, I carried it at first, then Saber won it, then Akuma won it, then Chris Polo won it, then Coolman won it, then Mel won it, then, and Bullwinkle won it, Mel won it, Bullwinkle, Mel, Jack, Jade, Bro, Two Fists, Screamer, Two Fists, Master James, Two Fists, Alan Chung, Niels, Two Fists, a guy named Alan Chung, a bunch of different people. It's like, what the hell are you even talking about? Yeah, fact is that, a lot of different people, and this was across several different suburbs, so people who I knew, people who I didn't know, friends of friends, old acquaintances, and there are other titles as well which came and went. We created the Bowling Championship, a Team Battle Challenge, a Time Attack Championship, Survival Championship, Tekken Force Championship, which I don't think it ever really kicked off, but there's a lot of history, and a lot of different match concepts as well, which a lot of them you're starting to see in the series. One of them was the 1 to 150 challenge. Another was the 150 to 1 challenge. Best of 500 battles, which will probably come soon. But that one is, like I've said before, that's the big one. That's 500 matches. It takes a lot of time, and the first one, out of 500, to reach, 250 or more, wins that title. And what other challenges were there? Game over challenge, which was decreed when one person, it was basically an endurance challenge where one person would state, the match isn't over until he says game over. Then, there's a match which are called the winner's choice. Whoever won that match got to decree what the next challenge was. So a lot of different ideas here. And, the health handicap challenge, which hasn't been done, and I guess can never be done again because that option's been gone for quite some time. Blindfold challenge, which I guess we'll have to do that at some point, I suppose. But just a lot of different things. But the biggest one that we did, which I don't think we can ever really do again, is our own version of the King of Iron Fist tournament. It was named it after the King of Iron Fist tournament, and it was a points tournament where basically the person with the most wins, 1 win equals 1 point. Person with the most wins at the end of 3 months would win the title in that division. So there was in the first tournament there was bowling, there was bowl, there was a Tekken Championship, and there were like about there were 5. We ran 5 of them, and just random tournament. It was basically word of mouth. And like I said, once again, this was all in just some small little pocket in some small little district, not regional, not state, not like what it is now. With the advent of online gaming and the advances of the technology, now they've, now Tekken, Namco, and all these other places, they are now running professional gaming tournaments all the time. And this was something that we did just for the sake of killing boredom, and also creating a form of relevance for a game that we ordinarily would be bored playing with because you play it over and over again. And I guess that's a reason why I play these certain games as well, and the reason why I'm talking about Tekken so much is because, a lot of these games, particularly Tekken, you can do a lot of this stuff with. And there will be other fighting games that I've been looking at, obviously Mortal Kombat, which is, I would be remiss if I were to say that that is not something that I'm looking, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, that I'm looking towards getting some gameplay with that, and other fighting games as well, because there are some great fighting games out there other than Tekken, obviously. There's Street Fighter as well, and different ones. We just play through different versions, and yes, of course, maybe at some point as well, get a bit of variety in, play some online game, random online gaming, of course, but also maybe get a different guest in at some point, other than, because Saver is awesome, and I'm awesome, but maybe at some point have Saver play someone else, or me play someone else, whether that's online or whether we have another guest in at some point in time, and get that gameplay done and recorded to create a bit of variety. But, we're talking way down the track, and now probably we'll talk way too much. I didn't even remember what the topic of discussion was. That's just how bored I am. Ah yes, I was talking about that because I was talking about the YouTube channel. Fiction, the series that I have got going on and off, and the no reaction challenge as well, which will be sort of in rotation, swapping over from period to period over, basically looking for a 13-week rotation for most of the video series that I do. Some of them do go over the 13 weeks, but then some of them just naturally happen that way, like the VR series, like the America series, like different gaming challenges which may go over 13. The aim is to get one particular game or series up to 13 and then swap over to another, just to get that variety and to stop, you know, getting into some mundane, boring ritual, to make it fresh, to keep people interested, and to make sure that, you know, when you subscribe to the channel, that you're always going to have something else, something interesting, something to do, because otherwise you'll just go outside and do something productive instead of sitting here and listening to me, watching all the videos, the comedy highlights which have been posting up. You know, there's a backlog of those because I've done quite a few highlights before I started editing them and putting them online. Now, a lot of the queries that I do sometimes get is, why didn't you, you know, on the one hand, people saying, why didn't you post the whole routine online for us to see? And on the other hand, why did you post anything at all? Well, the stuff that I've posted is not given anyway, it hasn't given anything away in terms of giving away major content that would, you know, render any, you know, selling seats in a house. Whereas, you know, obviously if I were to put a whole routine online, like I've said before, that would be career suicide, because then I'd just be putting out a routine online. Why would you come to a gig or paid, you know, pay for a show, you know, 20-30 bucks for entry or whatever it happens to be at the time, when you could just sit at home and watch in the comfort of your own home and particular clips and routines? But there are stuff, you know, on the other hand, why didn't you post the whole, you know, why would you post anything at all? You know, there are some unique clips on there, the interaction with audience, you know, the different atmosphere, the different reactions from the crowd, and sometimes got, you know, different, you know, clips and quips that I do put in there that may be relevant to the venue that I'm at, the people that are there. Perhaps the, you know, like I said, the reaction of the audience, perhaps, you know, certain location, you know, certain joke to warm up the crowd, perhaps, you know, just sort of feeding off what the MC had just said, you know, a variety of different things that are perhaps unique to each individual show, which makes it a highlight of that show without specifically giving away the routine. But, you know, there are things that happen that, you know, do capture from time to time. I had made a decision, you know, because rare as it is, but like maybe twice and very extremely briefly have had a heckler, you know, but, you know, I've decided not to include them in my highlights. One, because their attempt to heckle was bad. It wasn't even good, you know, to start off with. And secondly, because I brushed them off so quickly, and it was just them one comment and then me just, you know, bumping them off. But if you do want to hear what they are now, I mean, one of them in particular was with a new routine that I was trying out, which I was basically saying, you know, sex is boring, you know, when you think about it. And before I could get into the reasoning or anything, you know, go into the actual bits, some guy yelled out, "You're doing it wrong!" To which I basically retorted to him, "Oh yeah? Well, if sex is so exciting, why aren't you doing it right now?" And, you know, he just had some stupid response like, "Oh, I'm eating." It's like, yeah, we'll get a little intro perspective right there. Just think about that. And another one, which I think it might have even been the same guy at the same venue on a different date, where I was testing out a joke, you know, in one of my most successful routines, but before it became the successful routine that it was, you know, sort of trying out, you know, different way of presenting it, you know, where I basically went out and, you know, the opening bit where, well, the routine as it is now, give this little bit away, and it won't obviously give the whole routine away, but it starts off by me saying, you know, a little bit about myself. I'm straight, but I like gays, and gays like me too. But in the beginning, it was a bit of an extended version that I tried out at the venue just to see, you know, if it would work. It's like, I am straight. And then I added a bit in between, which I've now removed, obviously. But on this, pardon me. On this occasion, I basically added a bit. It's like, oh, what, no applause? You know, people who come out of the closet get applauses all the time. I come out of the woodshed and I get nothing. just all, being playful and tactful with the audience. And then some smart-ass guy in front, it's like, oh, maybe you're lying. To which I retorted, basically comments like, oh, really, you're at the front of the line then? And he said something like, just, oh well, something about, I'll take it, just sort you out. It's like, just ignored him, fobbed him off. But the thing about that is that, the guy obviously then got pissed off, and then he was just talking to his mate the entire rest of the time. And the thing to say about that is that when you got people in the show, and it actually happened quite recently as well, one of my performances in recent time as of this podcast, a routine that I did once and hadn't tried for a while, but it got a good response at one room. Like I said, been doing a routine for a long time now, and this routine, which I just mentioned before, which I'd fixed up, which, got that previously mentioned heckle, but fixed it all up, and, has killed in every venue that I've been, including the one that I was at. And then I figured, well, time to go to the next routine that I've done before and work on that one now to make it as good. So what happened was I went and I dusted that old routine off, added a little bit more to it, cleaned it up a bit in the bits in the beginning, then in the ends that didn't get a laugh at the last venue, or not as much as it would have, not as much as it did before, but hopefully it would this time. And, essentially performed it the same way I did before, just at a different venue at a different time, and it fell flat. And I didn't bomb per se, but I kind of died on the stage. I went stubbornly through and performed the entire routine. I got very minimal to no reaction at all, and, well, to say the least, it was a routine that did well to a degree at one venue a while ago, but then I performed it at this one, and not so great, unfortunately. And it wasn't just me, it was a couple of of the established comedians as well, and just the audience was not very receptive at all at this room, and especially on this night. It was packed, but no one was budging at all. No one was really laughing at anything. And the one excuse that people will say is that, the particular crowd, the particular audience, and the taste of the individuals in there, they obviously just have a particular brand of comedy that they like, and unfortunately that wasn't their flavour. But ultimately, the only thing I have to say to that is that I fully and completely am not shifting. As much as that may all be true, the fact that the crowd just wasn't into it, the crowd wasn't receiving it, the crowd wasn't really giving anything a chance, the fact is that we're the comedians, and at the end of the day, we're the ones that are supposed to incite a reaction because it is comedy. Now, I'm not saying that the audience was disrespectful at all, because there were probably ample opportunities where they could have heckled, booed, or hissed, or done anything disrespectful, which would have been out of line, and perhaps it would have saved my routine, because then I could have bounced off that person and then turned it into a real highlight. But I guess it's the first time that I can honestly say there were no highlights in that night. So that is why you'll see a particular gap in between my comedy highlights, where I'll end up posting something else, because there was no highlights of that night. Unfortunately, it fell flat. I wasn't the only comedian that did, but this isn't about anyone else. And on that particular night, with that particular routine testing out, for the first time ever, I flatlined. It's not the first time, and not on the first stage, that I have seemingly failed. But, well, it's a very dangerous thing for me to fall flat, because then I get up, I dust myself off, and then I'm hungrier and more determined than I've ever been, and I work my ass off then to get to where I need to go and to do what I need to do to become even more successful than before. And the fact is that my stubborn self with the last routine that it didn't fall flat, but it wasn't very well received with the audience. I fixed that up so well that it became my best routine ever. And that was a routine that didn't fall flat, but it wasn't completely well received. Just imagine what my stubborn self can do with a routine that fell flat, and then I got to go back and work on it and make it even better than it was before. And I've done it before. And I've got several routines that have come out there and have done amazing with the audience. One in particular which is killed. I've got a good solid 5 minutes and a lot of other stuff that I've been working on. This one didn't on this night at this occasion, but hey, you know what? Fact of the matter is, all I gotta say is this. I'm so stubborn that I turn my worst failure into my greatest success. Sometimes you scrape the lowest point to leap up to the highest of heights. And the thing about that is, as well, to say the least, is that, well, I fall down, I get back up, and then I run harder. And I've literally had to do that as well because, middle distance background, when we talk about, from a martial arts perspective, being quite literally and vigorously and, from a physical aspect, knocked flat on my ass. And I've had to get back up and fight even harder than before. And I've done that, And I guess that's a long-winded story as to when I'm bored, it's a dangerous thing, because then I become very productive. I become innovative. And that's where my mind works, because then I get things done that no one thought I would do, that no one expected. And from there, that is where I have come up with a lot of the greatest ideas that I've had, and looking over this entire podcast, this was created out of boredom. The whole concept of all the videos on YouTube, out of boredom. My routines and all the notes and everything that I've got right now, all created out of boredom. If it weren't for boredom, there would have been no productivity created from nothing. To give, to get something to fill the in-between. And I guess you could say that this whole thing right here has definitely been an experience, because there are people that will look back at this in many different ways, shape and form. It's like, what the hell was even the point of this? Well, the fact is, it is what you make of it. This podcast, the content that I've mentioned, and even the very final thing where it's like, why would you even admit that you fell flat on your face? It's like, well, I'm not ashamed at all. It's like, okay, so I've had this many nights, these many, nights and venues and gigs where they've been successful, and I've had maybe a couple where they weren't so much. But that's okay, because you learn, you grow, you become better. And I feel that even right now, getting it out there and talking about it, because I know for a fact that there were probably a couple of people in that crowd of comedy, maybe in the audience and even among comedians, that would have perhaps been salivating at the fact that Liamo All-Star has stumbled and fallen. There's something to say about that as well. I've busted my ankle so many times, and it hasn't even affected me. What I mean by that is, a person rolls their ankle, they're now immobile, they now can't walk, they now can't do anything because they can't handle the pain, they give up, they quit. They lay there in their agony, and perhaps because they can't tolerate the pain, because their pain threshold is just too minor, and perhaps even because they can't overcome the fact that now their ankle's out, so they're not innovative enough to get around. Now, there have been at least 3 times in my life where I have rolled my ankle, and it has gone to a perfect L with my ankle and my foot rolling, and somehow managed not to break my ankle, but it rendered my foot in such immense pain that on the first time I ever did it, could not walk at all. And I know that's your typical full-blown rolled ankle. I had that happen again about 3 years ago, where I did it again, and I heard a click. I thought I'd broken my ankle. I didn't, but I pulled a ligament, tendon, and perhaps even muscles, everything that basically holds your ankle together except all the bones and everything. And I guess the fact that I do perhaps have that little bit of flexibility from having long, short muscles, from a fitness perspective, having long, short muscles for some time in my life has led to a bit of flexibility, perhaps where I should or where I shouldn't. And the fact is, what I'm trying to get at is, I busted my ankle. And in that situation, a lot of people will be on the ground screaming in agony. I bust my ankle in a fight. I got up and I fought on. I rolled my ankle in a race once, in a running event. I continued on. When I was even just doing something like my day job, working, rolled my ankle. I continued until the end of my journey, the routes that I was doing for my day job. Everything that I have done that leads up to this moment is because I have fallen and because I got back up. And in spite of all the pain and suffering that I might have endured, fact is, I'm still traveling along, and it's all because of that failure. It's all because of that fall. But there are people, like I said before, that would salivate at that would think, oh yes, he's down. And they would look at that moment and think, great, excellent, now's my chance to outshine him. And those people, okay, that's great, because now we both have the exact same, ironically, the two of us have the exact same objective as each other, to be better than I am now. My goal is to be better than myself. Your goal is to be better than me. So effectively, we're both trying to be better than I am right now. I'm trying to be better than, you know what I mean? So, with that said, the goal becomes different, but the same, because that person's goal becomes selfish and perhaps even petty and juvenile, whereas mine is self-motivated, and it comes from a place of becoming a more self-improved individual. And all that, like I said, would never have happened. My success, my greatest success at the best times is what it is. It's great success. But my worst failures, in terms of my worst failures compared to other people, my worst failures are greater than their best success. And the reason why I say that is because, if I failed at something, but that's more than some people have ever bothered to try in their life. And where I am right now compared to where I was before is much further forward and in a place where no one thought that I would ever be. And that's a victory in itself. And it's all because I felt. It's all because I thought. It's all because of the negative. Turn it into a positive. And maybe that's the whole point of this whole podcast. Started from boredom, and then it had a point by the end. Maybe people are even still listening, but I think the point has now been made. We're heading towards an hour of the podcast. And hey, if you enjoyed it, then by all means like, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and by all means subscribe to receive more podcasts, to receive more updates of where I'm going, what I'm doing, or maybe just even little comments, clips and other things. Find out where I'm going to be playing next on my Facebook page by following me. You may even see me fall at a gig. Or you may just see my next greatest performance. Who knows? We don't know exactly what life will bring us. For all we know, it could be just a night where everything fails but I succeed, or everything succeeds and I fail. Either way, at least I'm out there and I'm giving it my best go, and I'm doing it for all the right reasons. And I'm out there, and I'm here right now to say, as I've always said, my name is Liam, and I will see you guys next time.